Um, is there anybody here for the first time that's never been here before? Would you like to unmute and just introduce yourself?
I'm Paula from Indiana.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, Paula.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Good. Is it and Mary Lee?
Mary Lee in California.
Hi, Mary Lee.
Hey.
I'm glad you're
Hi.
here.
Glad to be here.
Good.
All right. Hello and welcome to Lulu's Way, Healthy Food, Healthy Life. My name is Barb and I am grateful for the opportunity to be your host this evening. In order to keep this meeting free from distraction, we ask that all in attendance please mute yourself unless you are speaking. We also ask that you keep the video mode turned off if you're doing anything other than sitting and participating in this meeting so that we can minimize distraction. In this community, we gather to support, encourage, and inspire on the benefits of nutrition, weight loss, wellness, and the joy that comes from choosing to serve yourself well. We are not medically trained, nor do we have any formal training in nutrition. We come together here for the sole purpose of providing support, sharing experiences, and promoting a healthy lifestyle. It may be wise to check with your healthcare professional with any dietary suggestions or advice you receive from this group discussion, especially if you have health challenges. Individuals in this group may have different ideas on how to eat healthy. Just figure out what works best for you and do it your way.
Yay.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah. Anyway, so welcome everybody. I'm glad to see everybody here. And last week we started a series of guest speakers. Tonight we have another wonderful speaker to share her story with us tonight. If there's anybody here that has any kind of illness or disease, or you're on medications that you're hoping to move on from, you're open to take better care of yourself and maybe move on, this will be quite an inspiring story. She's been with us since day one, when we first started this group back in the very end of December, and we've grown to know and love her. And I'm going to give the floor to her. Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Chris.
So I am extremely nervous, but I think it's extremely important that we share our stories. Not only does it give us hope that we can do it, but it also lets us know that we have fellow warriors on the journey, that we're not alone. My story started when I was about 17, going into 18. Many of you know I'm from the Caribbean, a Jamaican mom and a Trinidadian dad. We lived in different places based on where my father was posted. And I started gaining weight towards the end of high school. Nothing serious. I had been slim up until that point, extremely active, sports, all sorts of stuff. And I started gaining weight, but it occurred to me as I was thinking about what I would say tonight that I had never seen a scale in my home. Nobody ever weighed themselves. And I didn't know what I weighed for a long time after that. But Caribbean parents are very particular about how their children go out in public. And I remember sometimes my father saying to me, "Your pants are too tight, go and change them." And that was the first inkling that, oh, you're putting on weight, but not in a very conscious way. And at the end of high school, we were living in Trinidad at the time. I went to England to study. And I didn't know what my weight was, but I knew that I was putting on weight. My parents decided that for my first year, I would live at my father's sister's house, my aunt. And she was very old school. And she would talk about how much I was eating. And as a girl child first going abroad on her own, even though I was with family, my parents sent my money to my aunt, and she gave me what my parents said that I should be given every week. And there was extra money as well. And my aunt decided that I was too fat and I needed to have a girdle. I knew older people wore girdles, and I refused to wear it to class. And I remember that first Christmas when I was going home. By this time, my parents were living in Venezuela. And my aunt, who was taking me to the airport, she could see me dressing, put your girdle on. And in those days, I don't know how it is for other cultures, but plane rides used to be a big deal. You dressed to the nines to get on a plane. And I couldn't get out of putting on this girdle, which was ill-fitting. I remember being on that plane and thinking, this is a tourniquet, I'll never make this flight all the way to Venezuela. And I remember going into that small bathroom on the plane to extricate myself from it. And so I began to have this notion that not only was I too big, but that it was unacceptable. And I went back, and in my second year, I moved into my own place of student housing. And it was at that point that I decided that maybe I should do something about it. But what did I know how to do? I like to eat a lot. And I started taking what they called back in the day keep fit classes and trampoline classes to try to rein this weight gain in. But I was still eating as much, or if not more, than I ever had been. I still didn't know what I weighed, but I knew that my clothes couldn't fit. And certain things happened that really brought home the fact that I was too big. I came out of the library one day and someone handed me a flyer for Herbalife and said, you could lose a lot of weight if you went on this. So I rustled up my money and I bought this Herbalife, which was absolutely terrible. And I was literally starving. And so that I quickly abandoned that. And I continued to gain weight. And it was not until I finished my studies in England and went back. My parents were now living in Maryland, suburban Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., that I really thought I need to do something. By this time, every time I would come home, my parents would take me to the doctor for a checkup. And that was the first time that I knew what I weighed. And at that point, I weighed 220 pounds. And so I started going to the gym. Back in the day, up north, you had really fantastic coupons. And so I would buy all these lean cuisines and all these different meals. And I wouldn't eat one, I'd eat 2 or 3 of them because they weren't satisfying. I was still very active. My parents had a pool. In the summer, I would swim 40 laps, but I was just eating too much. Eating to the point where I couldn't even move. I was so stuffed. And, I always say we should eat like children. Children, they'd stop eating when they're full, and they don't eat what they don't like. Well, if it was on my plate, I would eat it. And so life continued, and I tried really hard to diet. Nothing worked. I was heavy, clothes were ill-fitting. I started at that point to feel really badly about myself. I would meet family that we hadn't seen for a long time, and I would get these comments like, wow, you're a big gal now. And it was just really demoralizing. I went overseas to work in 1994 and living life, active life. Was a human rights observer in Haiti, had a lot of investigations to conduct where you had to walk into the mountains, but I was young. Your body responded, you just lived that way, but I was very, very heavy. And, I met my daughter's father in Haiti, and I lived in Haiti for 6 years. And in my 5th year, I came to the United States, had my daughter, and went back. I had a brush at the end of my pregnancy where, as you go closer to your pregnancy, you have these meetings, these doctor's appointments once a week, and they felt that my sugar was high. And they made me come in and do that 3-hour glucose test, and they said that you were fine. But my father had been diagnosed with diabetes about 8 years before that. And because of the different illnesses you could contract in Haiti, typhoid, malaria, dengue fever, I was very particular about any water source, and they dubbed me the hypochondriac of the family. If there's an ailment, Chris is going to have something for it. And so because of my hypochondriac status, I bought a blood glucose meter because I had heard that diabetes ran in families and my father was diabetic. And I went back to Haiti after my daughter was born, and things started to happen. I'm a praying person, so when I would get home in the evening, my daughter had a nanny that took full care of her and cooked my meals. I would sit my daughter on my lap as I was putting her to bed, and I would pray, and then I would pray as though she was praying, because I recognized I needed to do something. And I would say, now you're going to pray for mommy that she's going to get her health together. But my daughter was 8 months old at the time, so she's not speaking, but this was my routine. But things started happening. I started having fender benders, small little accidents. Haiti was a difficult place to maneuver with a car at times, and you had to drive very carefully. And the first one I had, I jumped out of my car and I quarreled with the man. Where are you going? You came out. I couldn't see that it could ever have been my fault. And I started to develop an intense thirst. I started not being able to kneel down. Knees were painful, joints were painful. I started not being able to sleep the entire night without getting up to use the restroom, which had never been my habit. But I didn't put things together. At some point, I remembered I came across that blood glucose meter, and I said, oh, let me just set this up. And I set it up, and I took my blood the first time I'd ever done that, and the meter was blinking, check, check. And it had a number like 300 and something, and I thought, this stupid meter, it doesn't even work, and I tossed it to the side. And then I had another fender bender, and then another near brush. And one Friday morning, I worked in the prison, the local prison administration. I had an office there, and then on Fridays I would go to headquarters and write my reports. And this particular Friday, it was always a fun time on Friday because you'd meet all your other colleagues, and we went to lunch in the cafeteria, and I came back and I was writing my reports, and everything was going dark in front of me. And I kept blinking at my lap, looking at my screen, and I looked out the window, and it was bright outside. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought, okay, you've got to do something now. By this point, it was difficult for me to drive from the office to my home 30 minutes because I didn't know how I would get inside to get to the bathroom. That's how terrible it was. At this point, as soon as I got to my office in the morning, I bought 2 of the local sodas as tall as this, and I started drinking. My thirst was so ridiculous. And I would hold that bottle. I couldn't even pour it in a glass, and soda would be rolling all down here. I just needed to get in, and water didn't help. I just needed the soda, and I know now that I needed the sugar. And so that day when everything was going dark and I kept shaking my head and I felt slightly dizzy, I got up and I said to my very good friend, I said, I'm going to go to the military hospital and check myself out, have a checkup. Everything is going dark. I don't know what's wrong. And she said, I'll take you because you don't go to the doctor. And I said, no, I'll drive my car there and I will just go home after. I had a small child. It was a mission that was a non-family mission, but the longer you were there, people are living lives and people had their children and their partners and whatever. And so she followed me to the hospital, and I went in, I told them what the symptoms I was having, and they said they were going to draw some blood. And I saw the medical professionals standing in the corner, whispering among themselves, and I thought, oh my goodness, what could it be? Why are they whispering? They came over to me, and one of them said to me, are you diabetic? And I said, no, I am not. And they said, well, your blood sugars are over 800. We're going to send it to an outside lab because you're probably very close to a diabetic coma. they were astonished that I was actually walking, that I drove myself there. And it came back from the outside lab as over 900. So that engaged the whole process of having me medevaced out of Haiti to Miami. They wouldn't let me out of their custody. And I had a young daughter in a non-family mission. And they were asking me, do you have family here? I said, I will not leave her. I will refuse to go. I will go by commercial air the next day. And by this time, they had sent a Learjet from Miami. And the pilot said there was a jump seat on the plane that I could strap her car seat into so that she could travel. They had to take me by ambulance. At this point, they had to put in a catheter because I couldn't hold my urine at all. It was impossible to collect my things and my daughter. As a side note, many of you may have seen images of Haiti on TV and the news. Infrastructure wasn't very good. There was a time that I was traveling home from work with a friend, and she had a flat tire. She was in her car in front. It was in a part of town that wasn't very safe, so we would convoy. And we had to stop to get this tire fixed, and I realized I was in a big problem. Too far from the office, too far from home. I've got to urinate. And it was in a really poor part of town where people didn't have toilets in their home. And I had to go and ask someone if I could pee in their outdoor shower because I couldn't hold my urine. So I'm at the military hospital and I'm being evacuated. I called my mother. I said, listen, I'm being evacuated. I will be at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. By this time, it's 6 a.m. By the time all the paperwork is done, could you come and get my daughter? And she and my aunts met me at Jackson Memorial. And so I was admitted, obviously, and I was severely dehydrated because, I couldn't keep any fluid, couldn't keep my body hydrated. And they began insulin immediately. And I was there for about 3 days, 4. On the third day, the doctor came in and they were giving me the injections, the insulin injections. And the doctor came in and said today, and he had some doctors who were doing their residency there, and they were all crowded around the foot of the bed. And he said to me, today you're going to give yourself your shot. And I said, no, I can't do that. It's okay, I'll pass. And he said to me, well, you can't pass because if you don't give yourself a shot, we can't discharge you. And I remember him looking at me, and I said, well, how long will I have to take insulin? And he said to me, for the rest of your life. And I remember thinking, I didn't know enough about diabetes it felt like a death sentence to me. And I remember holding back my tears because I didn't want to cry in front of the doctor. And I forced myself to give myself the injection. And I did it 3 times, and then I was discharged. We came back to my mother's home, and my aunt, we called her the matriarch. She was no longer with us. She was at my left knee when my daughter was born. She was a nurse, a midwife, and a nutritionist. She took me in hand, and she lived in very close proximity to my mother, and she brought my breakfast and my lunch in the morning. She went home and cooked, and she brought my dinner. And I wasn't allowed to eat anything that she didn't give me. And so my blood sugar started to come down. She set me an appointment at the doctor's office. That doctor taught me how to reduce my insulin as I started to lose weight. I was on sick leave for 5 weeks as I started to lose weight and needed less insulin. And it's so funny because you would think in the midst of this terrible trial that I was going through, I wouldn't want anything else to eat. But I couldn't escape my aunt, and I couldn't escape the blood sugar readings because she would check them. And I remember one day saying to my mom, I need to get out the house. Just drop me off at the mall and come back for me in a couple of hours. And I went immediately and bought myself a bag of Cheetos and a stuffed, only one bag, I thought, because if your Aunt Norma, when she gets there in the evening and checks your sugar, she's not going to understand why it's out of whack. And so I started losing weight and started reducing the insulin. And my aunt was the one that said that if you lost enough weight, if you lose enough weight, you can get off the insulin. I went back to Haiti. I consulted a nutritionist. In the Caribbean, we cook with a lot of oils. Haiti is no exception. The nutritionist said you have to speak to the person who cooks your meals, get her on the phone. And she terrified her. She said, Miss Thomas is sick. If you don't throw out the oils, you will kill her. And I remember I continued to lose weight. And I remember talking myself through dinner in the evening because the food tasted good. I wanted to eat all that was prepared, and I had to tell myself, you can have it for dinner tomorrow. You don't need to have it now. You've had what you're supposed to have. That's enough. You're not hungry. But it was a constant struggle. At the end of that contract, I came back to the United States, to Florida. And at that point, I am, approaching 38. And that's when I started dieting in earnest, because all the weight that I had lost from the time I was medevaced up until I came back to the United States, I put back on. And I started to put more on. And I had to increase my insulin. And I continued in this cycle of trying every diet out there. I did Weight Watch 3 times. I did Jenny Craig. I did Nutrisystems. I did a diet center twice. And then I thought I hit the Holy Grail with HCG, and I did that 3 times. And that was literally starving myself. And every time I would rebound. And by this time, oh, by the way, I neglected to mention that when I got to the hospital, when I was medevaced, that's when I knew what my weight was. I was 292 pounds. And so I'm back in the United States trying every kind of diet. And every time I would start one, I would be gung-ho. I'd get everything I needed for this diet. And when I would fail, like most other people, it took a while to try again. But while it was taking a while for me to try again, a year and a half, 2 years, I'm getting older and my body is not responding in the way that it had when I was younger. And finally, in 2018, I came upon, through my pastor, I noticed he was losing weight. So, what are you doing? And he had found this doctor called Joel Fuhrman. And I bought his book and I thought, I am going to do this. Because at this point, I was taking 3 medications for my high blood pressure, and it wasn't controlling it well. I had developed diabetic neuropathy, so I was taking a medication for that. I was taking 2 oral diabetes medications, and I was on insulin. So 7 medications that were not controlling things well. I was at a desperate stage. I couldn't cook at home because I was too exhausted. It was all I could do to get through my workday. Driving my daughter in the morning as we were dropping her to school and going to work, I was so exhausted that every red light, I was fighting to stay awake, and every red light, I saw it as an opportunity to shut my eyes just for 30 seconds. And I would tell her, I've got to shut my eyes. You let me know when the light turns green. It was difficult. And I would say that was really, really my rock bottom. If I don't do something, I didn't think I would live to see my daughter into adulthood. And so I started Joel Fuhrman. It was May of 2018, gung-ho, doing well. I lost almost 40 pounds by Thanksgiving. It was the most amount of weight I had ever lost. and Thanksgiving hit. And I thought to myself, ooh, we're having a really big gathering. And you've been so good. Enjoy the holiday. But I want to mention that up until that point that I started on this whole foods plant-based diet, it was the first time in my life that I appreciated that food could be my friend, and that food could heal me, and that food could give me a good quality of life. So that was the beginning of that notion that food is not the enemy. If I eat the right things, it can be good for me. But Thanksgiving, I decided I was going to take a break because I knew what to do. This time, I knew what to do. And so I ate everything and then some. And I didn't get back on plan. I just couldn't. It's too hard. It had been my pattern. And I was disappointed. I was angry at myself. I was ashamed of myself because everyone kept talking about how well I was doing. My medications had started to come down. I was on 1 blood pressure medicine, no insulin. And, the neuropathy, I couldn't do anything about it, was much improved. And so, I started spiraling again. And then in 2019, I said, let's try this again. You know that this works. This is a way that you can live. And you didn't have to measure the food. You didn't have to weigh the food, but you knew what portions to eat, and you were only eating certain things. And all of those things that you were eating were good for you. And there were no animal products involved. And that I had struggled with that. And I've continued to struggle with that. And I've reconciled that now. I'll let you know about that in a minute. But so I started again January 1st, 2019. Then we had COVID in 2020. I was at home, working from home. Thought I was doing well. I started eating things that I hadn't been eating. I started eating cheese. I started eating that. And I had breakouts on my face. I don't know if my body wasn't used to it. And I started spiraling again. And so in 2020, here I go again. And all this time, I wasn't being accountable to myself on many levels. One, I wouldn't get on the scale because I knew it wouldn't say what I wanted it to say. And I couldn't face the fact that I had put on a significant amount of weight, but my clothes were getting tight. My blood pressure wasn't holding. I knew I had to take more medication. And so 2020, I started again, started slowly, and the weight loss was slow. And every time I went to the doctor, I would turn my back. Don't tell me what my weight was. I didn't want to know because I didn't want to know that my weight was not what it was in December of 2019. And at that point, I was 186 pounds. I didn't want to know. I knew that I was way off. And so I started again. Slowly, the weight was coming off slowly. And then I found Lulu. How did I find Lulu? I found Lulu because I was going to buy a van like hers for my personal business and to have a little camper van. And I started looking for videos on that. And it turned out that it was too small for my needs to transport my products and to be able to have a living space. But by then, I thought, this is a spunky lady. I like her. And I continued looking at her videos. And then I saw the food one and I said, wow. One of the things that I enjoyed about Weight Watchers was that sense of community and like-minded people. Now, it ended up not being what I needed, but there was a community of people that you could talk to if you were struggling with something. And so when this was starting up, I said, oh yeah, this is for me. And so that's where I am. I did not weigh at the beginning of August because I was traveling out, to Mississippi and back, but I will weigh at the beginning of September. And I feel confident that I'm back to that weight where I was when I stalled. So my story has a lot of hills and valleys. I'm still learning. I'm learning. I've reconciled the fact that my doctor says I need to eat some animal product based on what he's seeing in my blood work. I've reconciled that. I never didn't eat meat because I didn't like meat. I didn't eat meat because I was on a diet. I'm not on a diet now. I'm on a way of life. So I will have certain animal products. I don't intend to necessarily have them all the time because there's so many things that I can eat, but I'm not going to rule them out anymore because I've realized that I've listened carefully to everything everyone said, and what Lou, you say, and Barb say, you find what works for you and you do that. So for me, this plan works. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to wonder. I know I can change my menu when I'm bored with something. This is the road for me. This is how I'm going to hopefully never have to take insulin again. This is how I can stall the progression of my diabetic neuropathy and maybe reverse it or keep it so at bay that I can reduce that medication. This is how I can go out and hike now because I can walk on my feet. This is life for me. So I thank you all for being a part of my journey. I liken us to a war group. And as we go along, we're pulling people into our little band. This is the way this will work. Talk with us, sit with us, meet with us, ask your questions, tell us where you're falling down. We'll help you. We'll pick you up. We'll brush your knees off. We'll put you right back on the road. There's no shame. There's no struggle in finding this community and finding hope and finding that we can persevere, finding that we can do it even when we think that we can't. I remember years ago when I was on one of these diets and I was trying to encourage my cousin, and she said to me, you know, I heard something on the radio of the percentage of people that lose weight that never keep it off. And I remember feeling hopeless. I don't feel hopeless now because I believe I will get to what's a healthy weight for me and that I will live the rest of my life that way. And so I'm thankful to each and every one of you on this journey with me. That's my story.
Thank you, Chris. Yay. What a story. What a story.
It had me mesmerized, Chris. That is I think we all knew a little bit of the story,
Yeah.
But you just put it in more context and timeline and detail and and how do you feel today, Chris?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel great, you know. I'm working on getting better sleep, and I still have struggles. One of my struggles is eating at the right time. I get caught up in things, and, you know, I've never been a lunch taker at work. I've started taking a lunch break so that I can have my lunch. 1:30 to 2:30, that's my lunch break. And so I'm working on that. I feel is an important thing for me to eat regularly, especially as a diabetic. And so that's something I'm working on. You know, last week someone was talking about how do you tell people what you do. And I remember thinking to myself, I've been vicious at times, but I've listened to you and Lulu, and it's like, oh, I don't eat that. And so I'm changing my mindset also that I don't have to be vicious with you. I'm just saying, I don't eat that. I don't eat that. Just very casually, oh, I don't eat that. No other explanation needed. I don't eat that. So still working on myself, you know, and it's a journey and it continues, you know, as long as we live, the journey continues. So
You're totally off the insulin right now?
oh yes,
Yeah.
no insulin. No insulin.
What about those seven?
No insulin.
What about those 7 medications that you were taking?
I'm taking 1 oral for diabetes, and I am taking the 2 blood pressure medications, but 1 I only take if I've had too much sodium and I see the blood pressure going up. Otherwise, I
So
don't
basically,
take
you're
it.
down
So,
to 2. From 7 to 2. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
3
huge.
because I have to take the medication for the diabetic neuropathy.
Oh, okay.
So 3.
Oh, and that one, you're always going to have that. Or have you seen improvement with that?
Well, funnily enough, I've started to reduce that and see how my feet feel. So I have
Wow.
reduced it by a quarter.
Yeah.
And it's holding.
Yeah.
It's holding.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Yeah, like Barb said, we've heard bits and pieces over the last 8 months, and now it's all kind of been put in order. So yeah, quite a journey, and you're in it. You're in it for life. You're just like, this is the way I want to be now. It's
That's
just you take a break. It's a big chance. We all know that.
Yeah.
You take a break, just this once. We just know what that can turn into. I've seen it
Yeah.
enough times that I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, sometimes people, especially in religious settings, they talk about repentance. And if you look at what the Greek word for repentance is, it means to turn away or to turn back. So I've turned away from what was before.
Yeah.
So repentance can have different meanings, but if you look at what the original word in the Greek means, it means to turn away.
Yeah.
So I've turned away from all that was before. I consider that no more. It's just a part of my history.
Yeah.
Just a part of my history.
Yep. Beautiful
So-
story.
This is a great story. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?
Not at all.
Yeah. So you talk about your aunt in England when you went to school there. Is that a different aunt
Yes.
than the one who picked you up in Florida and was giving you meals and you hid the Cheetos from?
Yeah, that's a different one. The one in Florida,
That's a-
my mom is my mother's sister. The one in England, she was my father's sister.
Okay. All right. That's just trying to understand the
Yeah.
Yeah.
aunts.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
in your culture. It sounds like you have very strong women that kind of set the standard, whatever that standard is, right?
On
Your
my
father's
mother's
aunt.
side. On my mother's side, because there were 6 sisters. Yes.
Yeah. And I see you, Chris, as a very strong woman. And at what point in your life do you think that you found your voice to do what's best for Chris? You know what I mean? Like, you come from
Yeah.
this in a traditional sense, right?
Mhm.
I mean, for me, it's, when my mom passed away, all of a sudden, well, you don't have to, you're it, right?
Mhm.
So I just wonder, I guess I see you as a strong, amazing woman. And I think in your culture, this is coming out all bad, but your aunt was like, what your aunt said, that's what you do.
Put the
Right.
girdle on. Put the girdle on. Yeah.
Well, that aunt was quite
Yeah.
difficult. But I was always a bit of a slight renegade. I did the things I wanted to do. I went on the kind of trips I went to do. So I wouldn't say I did what served me best with respect to food for a long time. So my father was very into women being independent and self-sufficient. So I remember even a time when I was in high school and I wasn't paying attention to my grades, and my parents are academics, and he would rant and rave if I got a bad grade. And one day he took a different tactic, and he sat me down and he said, your education's important. He said, you may think that you will marry and have children and everything will be okay. He said, but I'm here to tell you that men leave and men die. And it was like, oh, okay. Got to be able to look after me. So he sort of fostered that in me, that anything I wanted to try, go off and try and do it, So I was always my brothers as well were like that. So we were not, and we didn't, because we lived in different countries. Even though we're from an extremely close family, I wasn't always in the presence of the aunt, who we called her the matriarch. She didn't like that term, but she really was. She held us. She was the glue that held us together. If somebody was sick, she was there. So it wasn't, they were all strong, but it wasn't as though they made you feel that you had to do a certain thing because that was the way. Some things you just knew that you didn't do because it would be frowned upon, and you would get a Chris is at it again, but no, yeah. But they're very strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Yeah. Yeah. Your story is amazing, Chris.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're down to 3 meds, I mean, that's a win.
Yeah.
All
That's a win.
that's a win.
That's a win.
It's,
a win.
yeah.
And you feel good. You
Mascot-
feel good every day. To feel good every day.
Feel good.
I mean, there's just
Yeah.
no price tag you can put on that. You know what when you talked about that girdle, it brought back memories of my mother. Oh my God, God bless her. I mean, she was like a housewife, right? But she had this girdle. She would put a girdle on, and I can remember being a little kid. She'd be laying on the couch, and I would lay on the couch like and put my head like on her hip, and you could just smell the rubber. I have it in my head, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like when I really think back to that, it's just like you're just hanging around the house and you got a girdle on, Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But you were encouraged to wear one. I don't know. She never told me to put one on. But I just remember that rubber smell. Huh?
I was ordered to put it on and get it on that plane.
Oh God.
was pretty
Oh, something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, that's a wonderful story, Chris. I'm so
Yeah.
happy you shared it with us.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is there anybody that would like to raise their hand and just maybe comment to Chris or questions for Chris or just tell us about your week?
Sherry in Seattle, you're up.
Hey, Sherry.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. I just wanted to say, Chris, so many parts of your story are so moving, and I'm so inspired by you, and I'm inspired by so many people I'm hearing change the way they're thinking from it's a diet to it's the way I eat. It's the food. It's a food plan for life. And it just makes me so happy to hear people say that. It's just like I keep telling Lulu, you're probably so tired of hearing me say, you are changing lives, baby.
I
I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sherry.
It's just another way to live life, and people really think that I'm missing out on something, and I know that I'm not. Food is not what it's all about. Yeah.
Chris, and I love what you said about, I quoted you on when I take notes so I can follow, and you said, food can be my friend and heal me, and that food was your medicine, your new medicine.
Yeah.
That's
that was
powerful.
quite a revelation at that point, yeah.
Yeah, and was that just recently, or was that like
That was
2018 or
around,
2019?
yeah, around 2019, because prior to that and all the dieting, food was not your friend because you were trying to deprive yourself of it. So it was your enemy, really, not having it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good words right there, Chris. Okay. Let me do my job. I'll sit here and talk to Chris all day and leave you guys out. I can tell you that right now. But I won't do that. Kathleen
Hi,
from North
Kathleen.
Carolina.
Hey
Changed
everybody.
it, Kathleen.
Chris, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, and the energy that it took for you to do that is just remarkable. We really, really appreciate it because, you had to go back and kind of relive a lot of that. And to share it with us, and just thank you so much. It was really inspiring. And I also just wanted to comment on you were talking about how you are reassessing eating, because you were doing mostly plant-based, and your doctor has said that maybe adding some other foods to your diet. And I just really like how you're looking at how you're feeling. You're getting in touch with like what will really serve you, like like Lulu says, and how that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like, find out, because we're all individual. Everybody has different different things, and so I hope that serves you well, whatever decisions that you make, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the changes as they come along. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Thanks, Kathleen. Liz from Florida. Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. 100 thank yous. You had me right from the beginning when you said growing up, there was no scale in the home. You know what? It was like that at my home too. There was no scale. There's no concept of what do I weigh? We just existed and we were loved. That concept that I don't fit in, that is brought in like when you start going to school and the kids think that you look different or whatever, and you did say as you got older that your dad was trying to encourage you to kind of maybe reduce. My parents didn't do that. I just got that feedback from school. Like in middle school, they would have rhymes. Boys would have rhymes, a little ditty that they would sing about me, because I was the first one in the class to wear a bra, and it was just terrible. But anyways, you brought me back to those days, and it's amazing how the other thing that you said was how when you went on Joel's way of eating diet, and you were saying how you were starting to have the concept that food is medicine because you were starting to heal, right? And then isn't it amazing how our bodies are so much smarter than we are, and our whole life our body communicates to us, but we don't listen to it. We refuse to listen to it. We would rather read a magazine. We would rather find the solution elsewhere by someone else following a celebrity or something. But actually, if we just listen to what our body's communicating to us, because you said when you brought in some other foods, some more foods, and you started breaking out, that's another example. Your body was saying, hey, this is not something that I like. But we keep going. The next holiday, the next celebration, the next social event, we just keep going, right? But this way of eating, I agree with you. This way of eating really helps us tune in and listen to what is best for our body. It's like Lulu says, it's an incredible machine. It's so smart. Anyways, thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about when you were at the green, at the light, and you're so exhausted, you wanted to close your eyes, and you had your daughter let you know when the light turned green. Did you ever have your thyroid checked? Because
You're muted, Chris.
You're muted, Chris.
That happened to me, and I was diagnosed hypothyroid. So
Yeah, my thyroid has always been normal. They've checked it also.
okay,
It's just that, at that point, my blood sugars were just too high. You just couldn't
Okay.
sustain it.
right. Good. So, I mean, I'm sure that there are symptoms that indicate it could indicate more than one thing, and they just work through it. I just wanted that rang a bell that happened to me. I wanted to say, have your thyroid checked. And so, thank you so much. I'm going to be thinking about you all the time now because I know so much more about you, and I really appreciate your story. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Thank
Good.
you, Liz.
I have a question, Chris. So you said that your blood sugars were over 700, right?
They were over 800
Over
at
800.
the military,
Okay.
and over
800.
900 when they sent to an outside lab. Yeah.
So just for an idea, like what is normal and what is like pre-diabetic? What would your numbers be if
So,
you were pre-diabetic? And
I
what
want in the morning. I expect my blood sugars to be under 100.
Okay, so like that for
And
me too.
after-
For me too. For anybody,
Usually,
under
yeah,
100 is normal.
Between 80 and 100.
80 and 100.
And then if I've just had a meal, 140, 145 right after the meal, but then you want it to come back down to about 120.
And is that happening to? I mean, do you still monitor?
I do.
Okay.
Not as often as I used to,
Yeah.
and there's certain things that'll set it off. If I had, like when I had dental surgery, or if I have a cold, or but it comes back in range.
But this is
you know.
probably happening to all
So-
of us. We're just not checking it. So we have a meal, it
Probably
goes up,
because
and then
you're
it
not-
goes
you're not
down.
diabetic, right?
Right.
So that puts some perspective on having blood sugars that are over
Right. That's what I
900.
was just thinking. So,
Yeah.
so if somebody had blood sugar of 300, they're like full-blown diabetic. They're going to be
Well,
on
when I had
insulin.
initially tested it with that meter I had, and it started flashing check, it was like showing like 382, and I just thought it wasn't any good because I had never used it.
Right.
And that was, if I had thought about it at that
And
point.
then, oh my
that was
God,
my
and then it
first
was
one.
like double that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? It must
Yeah.
have just, what did that feel like in your body?
My main issue was that I couldn't hold my urine. I had to urinate at least once every half an hour.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quench my thirst.
Yeah.
No matter what I did, I had given up water. And the sugar, as Barb says, sugar
Yeah.
is the devil. More sugar, the body was craving more sugar, because everything was just completely out of whack. And I tried drinking water. It just wasn't doing it.
Couldn't
I
keep up.
just had to have sugary things to drink. Yeah.
I was
so
just-
those are
I'm
the
ju-
two
I'm-
main things. Terrifying.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, how are you even conscious? You know what I mean? It seems so
Well, that's
high.
what they said. That's what they said at the military hospital. They didn't understand how I was still walking, but I believe that day I was probably going to black out because
Yeah.
that was probably the day. And I had been saying to myself for a couple of weeks, I need to go to the doctor. I need to go to the
Yeah.
doctor. And I think if I hadn't gone to the doctor that day, I mightn't have met all of you.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, wow. What a thing to have in your past. Like Liz said. I think it was Liz that said that you have coming with the story. You needed to kind of bring up all that stuff in your past, some unpleasant things. And when I tell my story, it's filled with a lot of I have a video of my story, and it reminds me of the unpleasant moments in my life when I was struggling. And but we can't really forget it, because it's really sometimes we have to really have like a real horror story to really get to a place where we can just be slapped out of it, and it's
Before you came on the meeting, a couple of us were talking, and we were saying, I was saying it's like, when I was reflecting last night how I was going to talk, and I remembered, I don't want to be emotional, but you have to dredge up that past. But those are our battle wounds, those are our scars. It's like when you have a child and you get stretch marks, you never change that. So these scars are part of who I am.
Yeah.
Part of who I am.
And
So
they all-
I
everything-
wouldn't
and-
change that. It's brought me to who I am today, a better version of myself.
Yes, the best version of yourself, Chris. All right. Bonnie Stevens.
Hello, y'all.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hey, Chris. Hey.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hello, Chris.
Chris, that was absolutely captivating. And Nicole's was too, and I'm sure everybody's will be. I had the sensation almost of when I've been in a really good church service and the message is so strong that everything just goes completely still. Everybody's 100% attention is focused. And that was quite the story. And you are a miracle. So it is a miracle that you didn't, made it so long up to the point where your blood level, your sugar level was 800, and that you didn't go in a coma, and that you haven't even had any other issues from those kinds of episodes. My dad developed diabetes as he aged, and he had a real sweet tooth, and that's been passed down. I love sweets too. And breads and different things, but a lot of sweet sugar. And he wouldn't adhere to his diet, and he's a vet, so he went to the doctor one day, and I love so much what the doctor did to him because it fit him perfectly. He goes, he developed some sores on his ankles, and the doctor said, I'm not worried about the sores on your ankles because I can cut your legs off. And I can take your legs off as far as I need to, but what I can't fix is your heart and your vision and all the other things. I don't know exactly what they are, but all those, diabetes is a really bad thing, and it can affect all your major organs, and it can kill you. Not just because your sugar is high, because all of that messes up everything else. Yeah. So thank you for saying that. I wanted to say, so I had gained weight, and last year I had a high blood pressure scare, and it took me 6 months to decide that I was going to, change my eating habits and try to get some of the weight off because I didn't want to take medicine. And I knew it was, that would be a big factor of it. So I've done that. And the past couple of days, yesterday and today, I felt just very slight, weird, strange sensations, almost like being lightheaded, or even like the feeling in my legs or my body was just off some kind of way. I don't really know how to say it more than that. So this morning I thought, I'm going to take my blood pressure and I'm going to make sure it's not up, because I've even added some salt back to my diet and everything, and maybe that's the problem. So I monitored it, and it was 120/78, and my pulse was 62. And I think maybe my pulse is a little low, and maybe that's why I felt that way. But I could not believe it when I saw that it was 120, because before I lost this weight, or even at the beginning of it, I would be, if I got in a low, it would be 130. And for me, that is high, because I always had very low blood heart rate and blood pressure. So it concerned me a lot more than maybe even it concerned other people, because people are used to blood pressures being so high, but I knew that wasn't normal for me. And that all ties into listening to your body and everything. And that being said, I'm listening to my body as well. And so officially this morning when I weighed, I'm down exactly 30 pounds, which was my weight loss goal. So I have achieved my weight loss goal. And in listening to my body, I'm going to have to not try to lose any more right now. I'm going to have to try to stay level or lose it any more very, very slowly, because I think even though I'm eating what I'm supposed to, the past few days I have been so hungry. Like I had this great salad today and I was so full, and 2 hours later I'm thinking, how am I going to make it 2 or 3 more hours till dinner time, And so I need to add a little bit more food back. I really think, besides maybe, I don't know if the heart rate is too low, but that's what it is. But anyway, I'm very excited about that. And so I've spent the day with Kool and the Gang singing Celebrate.
Nice.
I'm enjoying the amount of weight anybody has to lose. We're all in this together. And when you hear the stories, I remember years ago, I went back to church with my mother, and I asked her after the service, did you tell that pastor about me? And she said, no, I didn't. The stories are the same, only the names change. And that's what it seems to be here to me. So congratulations on your good health. And the other thing I have found out too, and this 1 pound, so I only had 1 pound to lose, and it took me almost 2 weeks. This thing beat me up. And it was a real eye opener about how, you know, you're on maintenance. You're not like free. You can't just go do this, go do that, go do the other, even though I know this is a lifestyle. And I feel like there's a lot of good weight loss plans and they all work as long as you do them. It's when you stop doing them. It may take a while, but it will come back on you, and a lot of times more than that. But anyway, again, Lulu, thank you so much for the inspiration, because I'd kind of given up hope on myself. And as I mentioned last week, just seeing the consistency of you eating that food, I didn't have any problem with the food. I always love all that food, but I was using food as a drug for my emotions, like as Nicole was talking about last week. And what I realized was I was getting bigger and the problems weren't getting smaller. So, I mean,
That's usually
getting
how it
bigger
goes.
was not the answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
thank you guys.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much. Congratulations to you. Yeah, it sounds like it's time to add a little bit more food for you. So just enjoy it.
I think I've decided I'm going to add, I'm going to go, you know, when I started out, I was doing 3 ounces of protein because I have done Weight Watchers. I have their plan right now just to track my food and the points and everything. And they recommend 3. And then maybe about a month or so ago, I went up to 4, but I realized I'm going to have to go up to probably 5 ounces of protein, which is your maintenance recommendation. Probably not going to increase my carbs right now. We'll see how that goes.
Good. Excellent.
Are you getting enough carbs, Bonnie?
I think yes and no, actually, because my go-to breakfast is the Ezekiel bread with eggs and fruit. And I normally only eat 1 piece because I call it a tough bread. I don't even call that a hearty bread. That's a tough bread. And 2 just seemed to be too much for me, and 1 was okay. And then if I didn't eat any carbs at lunch, and then I didn't eat carbs again, or grains, I should say, until dinner. But recently I've been realizing, okay, you didn't eat all your grains at breakfast, so maybe you need to add some. So it could be that. But I'm not going to just like go up to 5 ounces of every, you know, all grains. And I'm going to do a little bit and see what happens.
Right.
I agree. You don't want to make a million adjustments as you're starting to go into maintenance. And Lulu probably is more experienced at this than I. But the carbohydrates are your fuel, and so if you're not eating the carbohydrates that you're supposed to be eating, then that might be why you aren't feeling 100%.
But I'm only
because you don't have enough fuel in your body.
Of grains. It's only a half of a serving. It's only a half of a serving. And you are right. If I ate the full grains at breakfast, I probably would last a little bit better till dinner for more grains. But sometimes I do have grains at lunch. We discussed that a while back because I can get low blood sugar. So sometimes it's really hard. I had to kind of work up to that and adjust to that. But there's some days I'm like, I just have to have a grain at lunch, and I'm having a grain. So
okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Let's see. Nicole from Minnesota.
Hi,
Minnesota.
Nicole.
You betcha, Minnesota.
You betcha.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for telling your story. That was beautiful, and I know from experience it's hard and nerve-wracking to tell it. So, but very beautiful, very touching. And I just want to say that, you know, all along since we started, I carry a lot of like the things people have said, or the tips, or the trial and errors that people have had, and I could just look at your faces, that those of you that have talked, and associate some tip or trick or heartwarming thing I've learned to help me as I go through each day. And so just like the whole story of your weight loss journey, like now I will carry that too, because I won't forget it. And it will remind me, like, even though I've never had diabetes, like, look what food can do. You know, not only can it destroy your self-esteem and cause depression, but it can ruin your health. and that you came back from the brink of that. You know, thank God you didn't go into that coma, and you know, and you wouldn't be here. Like it's so serious. It isn't just like Lulu said, the cute genes or whatever. You know, it's like life and death, and you're here for your daughter. So I loved it. I'll carry it with me, and thank you for sharing it.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah. Whew. My heart is full. Ooh, Sherry, did you want to say something again, Sherry?
I have a question.
Sure.
Chris, are you on maintenance now? Have you gotten to where you're on maintenance?
No, not on maintenance yet. No,
You're
I have a
on
while.
weight
I have
loss?
a way to go still. I still have a way to go.
I'm just curious. Are there tips and tricks for going from weight reduction to maintenance once we reach it? Are there things that we should know, advice you should give us, you know, problems we might have moving into maintenance, or anybody that's gone through it?
Yeah, I can speak on that. You know, the way that I do it, I just say, like, just have a system for yourself. If it's this system, then use this system. If not, just say this is what I'm going to do when I'm this. And but what I do is, you know, when I'm back in my range, actually, so I have the 5 pound. I have the 5 pound range. So I have an ideal range. I have an ideal weight, and I have an ideal range. So my ideal range is 2 pounds on either side. So it's a 5 pound range, right? So I make changes when I'm out of the range. So if I'm outside of my range, over the range, I'm going to reduce some food. If I'm under the range, I'm going to add food to bring myself back in. But it really doesn't take very much. So I would say the first change that I would recommend, when you look at the food plan, there's a grain at lunch and dinner. There's not a grain at lunch. I add a grain at lunch. Now, I know somebody that works out a lot at the gym, like with weights and everything, wanted to have more protein. So that made more sense for them. Okay, so maybe they did the 5 ounce protein, maybe added an ounce of protein on every meal, and increase their calories that way. And also they just wanted more protein. You know, you could just say, I'm going to have a piece of fruit at lunch. So now you're going to have 2 fruits a day. But you don't do all of these changes. Like, you just do kind of one at a time and see how your body responds to it. And for me, like, when I got like right at my ideal weight, that's when I started saying, okay, I'm going to work on stopping it now. What's going to stop it? You know, so just say I was going to add another fruit. So now I'm having another fruit. So now I'm going to see what happens next month. And if I'm down another pound, and I'm still in my range because I started this in the middle of my range, I'm down a pound. I'm like, okay, so what I'm doing now, I'm going to be losing weight, so I need a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So it's just about, and it's not about assessing it every day, because it's not accurate information, in my opinion. It's just look at it every month. Let your body adjust to this extra piece of fruit, adjust to this extra grain, whatever you pick to add. You know, and pick something that you like, if that's what you want. You know, it's not like, you know, because the food's there for us to enjoy. If you wish you had your piece of fish was a little bit bigger, then just, you know, increase your protein. If you like the fruit, you know, add a fruit at lunch or a fruit at dinner. I tend to keep the fruit just like at 1 serving a day.
I have learned since I started your plan, Lulu, that since I started it, that apparently vegans can often struggle with getting enough protein. So I have been really looking at different kinds of proteins, ways to get protein that I've never paid any attention to in the past. And that's probably why, that might be a big reason why I feel so much better. Besides the fact I find I'm down like 35 pounds. I mean,
nice, very
you know,
good, yeah.
But I'm sure that's a a lot of it, but also I'm getting the protein that I never even realized. So that's a thing.
You know what's interesting
Getting
about
enough
protein? Yeah, what's interesting about protein is that protein is in like almost every food. I think there's like two foods that I think celery. I don't think there's like protein in celery, and maybe like one other. I can't remember what it is. But you look at the nutritional thing on like a tomato, it will have like a gram of protein. You look at an apple, everything has some kind of protein in it. The grains, now that's a place for vegan to really look to increase their protein, because in grains, in rices and quinoa and all that, that's pretty high protein. That might even be equal to like nuts, like the same kind of protein grams. I'm not exactly sure, but because I was vegan for 22 years, so I know all, and I was vegan on this food plan I've been on this food plan for a little over 10 years, so that means that I was vegan on this food plan for 8 years. I've only reverted back 2 years ago. It was very intentional.
Do you have any suggestions for protein that I might not have tried?
I used to have nuts in the morning for breakfast. I would have tofu, hummus, beans, because it's like all kinds of beans, so you can get a variety there.
Yeah. I didn't ever think I liked tofu, and I have just recently found different ways of eating tofu that I actually like tofu. So I think that's huge. Yeah. And I think, like Bonnie was saying, that Ezekiel bread too is, I can have, 2 pieces of Ezekiel bread toast in the morning with peanut butter. I'm getting all sorts of protein there. So yeah, it's all, I'm learning so much.
Or you can even just make oatmeal, I kind of stay away from the Ezekiel bread just because I'm like, I don't really need it. Because I'm not eating sandwiches, I don't need a sandwich, so I would just, I would have a bowl of oatmeal. You can put a scoop of peanut butter in that and swirl that around. It's pretty delish, or a handful of almonds in oatmeal with a cut up apple. Yep. There's all kinds of different combinations of that, For breakfast every morning, I used to have sweet potato. So diced up baked sweet potato that was baked with cinnamon. And then I would put on, my protein would be nuts. So I would do half almond butter and half mixed nuts, right? So it would be a little sticky and a little crunchy. And then I would do fruit. I would do half fresh and half dry. So I'd have like cut up apple or cut up banana. And then the other half would be like raisins, like an ounce of raisins. So it was just this, like, I used to have that every morning. And you know something? I could still have that. I just don't have it anymore. I think, well, I'm kind of lighting up on the nuts. But I used to, I was like, this tastes like carrot cake. I was like, this is
but
like.
That's what I love about this whole food plan is I will have 8 different things on my plate. I mean, I'll have such variety, and I'm changing it all the time and learning new foods and ways to put them together. I mean, this is a delicious way to eat.
It is. It's
wonderful. I love this food plan.
Yeah, I love it too. Like today I went and I got a couple of different fish that I don't normally get, and I got a big head of cabbage, and because I've been, for some reason, that cabbage recipe of mine, that video has resurfaced. Sometimes these videos from the past resurface, and I'm getting all these comments on that video, and it was so long ago, but it's like new to some people, And every time it comes up and they're talking about it, I was like, I gotta make that again. It's been a little bit. So I got a big head of cabbage today to make that. But yeah, I just, you go into the grocery store and you look at that produce department, just about everything in there, you can eat it. And it's just about, measuring it out, especially being careful with the higher carb veggies like the corn and the peas and the winter squashes, just being careful with those, counting those as grains. And I just love my food, so that's really good. Really helps.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, I don't know if anybody said this, but quinoa is like one of the most perfect foods because it's very high in fiber and it's high in protein. It's gluten free. It's high. It contains a high level of iron. Good for your heart health and cholesterol. It's like I think they call it the perfect protein. Quinoa. That's correct, right, Chris? It's called the perfect protein. And so, if you had to pick something that you want to eat, quinoa would be the one because
and if you really feel like you need more protein, Sherry, you just Google what vegetables have the most protein, and then maybe choose those more often. Like I know, like broccoli, for instance, is like really high in calcium. So if you don't eat dairy like me, like I like to include a lot of broccoli for the calcium reason, and find out what fruits are most high in protein. You can find, or even the beans, which ones are more high in protein, So.
Yeah, a big fan of beans. I have a million different ways of eating beans.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I think
thank you very much.
Did I just see a question about couscous? Something just flashed on my screen. Couscous is just pasta. Couscous is not a grain. Those are manufactured with flour and water. So.
If I can add to that for maintenance, what was very helpful is to write down what your choice is to use for what you're adding, the food that you're decided to add for the month. Write it out because things happen and you forget.
Yeah.
And then you change your mind. But if you write it out, it's like, I'm committed to make this is the food that I'm going to add for the month. And so then when you weigh, you'll be able to be the judge. Was that helping you or hurting you? Because that's the only food that changed that month. Write it out.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I do. I have a on my phone I have a Galaxy under Samsung Notes. You can keep notes on your phone. On a note, I have it's my food and weight thing. So it's just one note document on my phone, and I open it up, and it has like the date and my weight, and that's all it will say if I haven't had any food changes. And then when I go in the next month, I scroll all the way down and I see, August 1st, this is my weight. This is what I did to change. This is what I changed. Because I did make a change on August 1st because my weight was down. So I added, I forget. See? You see? Yep, yes, that's the point. All I know is I do it every day. But I know what I did. I added an ounce of grain. An ounce to each grain serving. So I just write increase grains from 4 ounces to 5 ounces, right? So now the next month I go in, I'll go September 1st, and I have it goes back, it goes way back, and I can see the just the ups and downs and all the little tweaks I've had to make, and then sometimes there's several months where all it is just the date and my weight, because it was stable there for some reason. Because, your activity level changes, your body changes, you get older, you need less food, So I just, once a month, I just give it a check. I look what I've done, the changes I've made. And, and this month, I don't know I think I said it somewhere, but this month, I made the changes. So I said, I'm going to have an extra ounce of grain on each day. And then at the end of the day, on August 1st, I was like, I forgot to do it. I was like, what good foodie forgets that? I was just like, wow, I flunked. And I was like, who forgets about more food? See, this is what happens when you just you just get removed from the excitement of it. Like it was just, every meal is just exciting because I'm hungry and I need to satisfy that hunger. And that's what's good. It's not necessarily more, but then I remember the next day and I haven't forgotten since.
Great. Thank you. Stacy. you there, Stacy?
I am.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi. It's been a minute. I always watch the YouTube videos, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that I was a little late getting into it, so I didn't hear all of Chris's story, but I definitely resonated with me because I'm also diabetic, and I am vegan, and I'm still trying to figure out what is my way. I have a lot of different different people saying different things, different experts saying different things. And I know what works best for me is the cleaner I eat. Vegan works well for me. And I think there is something about the 3 meals a day, no snacking. Because as soon as you allow yourself to say yes to something when it's not your eating quote time, then it's like, oh, wait, did you say that was vegan? And then my eyes get very wide, even if it's not something that'll serve me well. So I think I'm going to make sure that I watch the replay of Chris's story, because I definitely want to hear her story, because I can relate to it on some levels. And I'm currently not on any medication or insulin, and I'd like to keep it that way. I was diagnosed 10 years ago, so I've been able to maintain it, but I do better when my weight is lower, and right now it's kind of crept back up, so I need to recommit to what works for me. And the one thing I did want to offer to Sherry, one of the things that I like a savory breakfast, because I have a sweet tooth, so even like an Ezekiel bread or a rice, there's something about that and the fruit feels a little sweet in the morning. I prefer that later in the day for me, and that's just me. So when I do my savory breakfast, I do like a tofu scramble with extra firm tofu, and I do turmeric and onion and garlic, and it's very delicious and very stinky, and kind of scramble it up. It almost looks like an egg, and I'll put that over lightly steamed broccoli, and then I might even take some hummus and I'll thin that out. So it's almost like a dressing then. So then I'll drizzle a little bit of that on the hummus before I put the scrambled eggs, in air quotes, the scrambled tofu on top. And it's just a very savory, filling breakfast. I don't know how you necessarily count that in the Lulu's plan per se, but it is one of the things that I often have for my breakfast. And I like to spread my veggies out kind of throughout the day, just because it can be such a large amount. I like having them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But anyway, just something to put out there, because there's a million ways to make tofu. I'm also a big bean fan. Also lentils, obviously, because you can make lentils into flatbread with just water and lentils. You could have like a flatbread that's protein dense that you could pile your salad in if for a protein source as well. So there's lots of definitely lots of things out there. Yeah, lots of things out there. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Just some ideas for the vegans trying to get a little bump in the protein, and like Lulu said too, so many, almost every food. It's just then find combinations. Quinoa is always obviously great to add to anything with some beans and stuff. You throw that in a salad, and you're cooking. Literally. It's so good.
Yeah.
So anyway, Thank you all so much. I'm really glad I was able to hop on today and see everyone. And we'll just keep keeping on. Keep doing what you're doing, everybody, because health is wealth. Yes. Health is wealth. It's the most important thing.
It is.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
All right. Christy.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christy.
First, I want to just say thank you, Chris, for your amazing story, and just having the courage to share it is wonderful. A lot of us don't have that courage to share our scary stories from our history. I just want to just say, like Liz, you said, write these new things down that you want to try because we forget them and everything. Because I did post that in a YouTube, Lulu's YouTube, with her rice cakes and the almond butter and the bananas. And I'm like, ooh, I'm doing that this week because I've been struggling. I reached out to her with my times. I'm like all over the place. Sometimes I don't get up early enough, and then I'm not hungry right away. So my time was really weird. But so now I'm pushing myself to get up at least a half an hour earlier. I homeschool my kids too, and we're very lenient with our time schedule. So it's not like, oh, I have to get up by a certain time, but we're trying to do earlier anyway. This whole week, I do have to say, I was 100%. Yay! And it was really big struggle with the sugar, really big struggle. So, but just reaching out to Lulu and trying to get my time on has been like a big help, because then I'm more focused on trying to do that instead of like, oh, I can't have this or I shouldn't have that, because I was more focused on having my breakfast at a certain time, having my lunch at a certain time, and having my dinner with my family, instead of being like, oh, wow, I ate my lunch too late, so now I'm going to do dinner later, or shoving 2 meals within 3 hours. And that's what I used to do a lot, especially with breakfast and lunch. I would get up and then I'd, mosey around and then I would say, oh, 11 o'clock, let's have my breakfast. And then everyone's eating lunch at like 12:30. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to have lunch too. And then, so I was literally squeezing in just to have it, So I'm not doing that. So if I don't get breakfast in before 10:30, I've actually decided, which this whole week I did. I had it early. I've been having breakfast at like 9:45, 10 o'clock. But I decided, if for whatever reason I don't have breakfast on time, I'm just going to do what Pam does, and that I will have my lunch, my, so to speak, lunch, and then dinner, and then breakfast for dinner, dessert, or whatever. But I didn't have to do that this week, so thank goodness. But yeah, writing these different ideas down, because usually I used to be a white toast, eggs kind of person in the morning with coffee and sugar and creamer, and I got out of that. I do the Dandy blend, which I love, but it's still hard for me now that I had that slip up not to want that toast with the eggs. So I was like, oh, wow. But when I see the rice cakes and the almond butter and the bananas, I was just like, wow, but I wouldn't remember that because it's not a habit yet for me. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to write these things down when I see someone's pictures or I hear something or a video. That way it gives me a good idea. I'm good with the whole dinner thing. I do the whole bunch of vegetables and the protein and the grain. I'm loving that. And I did work up my way to 16 ounces twice this week, but I was so stuffed. I was like, I know you're supposed to be full, but I was like so stuffed. I felt like I ate something I shouldn't have ate. And I was like, everything was compliant there. Why am I so full? And but it held me through the whole night. Yeah. And I know that's the whole point.
That's the point.
And but yeah, writing these ideas down, trying to get, like, also I think it was you, Chris, you said trying to get onto a healthier time schedule with eating. I see that it does help when I am doing that. And just every week coming here too and listening to everyone's stories is wonderful. God bless you, Chris, for getting as far as you have. I don't have diabetes, but I'm so heavy that sometimes I'm worried when I do go in for my yearly exam that they're going to tell me you're diabetic or pre-diabetic. And so I'm trying not to get to that point because I don't know how I would handle that, because I'm one of those people, I freak out for every little thing. So if that happened, it would probably throw me all off track, just mentally. So thank you for sharing that, because even those that don't struggle with diabetes and they're struggling to lose weight might help them see, yes, the food hurts you, and if you keep going the way you're going, there's possibility that you could get your life in worse condition than you already are, and you don't want to do that. So that's it. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christy.
So, Christy,
well said.
last week, I said to you, you come back here next week and say, I had a 100% week, right? We said that last week.
And I did.
And you did
it. It was really hard, though. It was really hard.
But you knew, you got to do it if you're going to come back here and say it, right? So
I had to, and I wasn't going to talk, but I was like, you know, I know Lulu doesn't point people out, but I'm waiting for her to say, okay, Christy, do you have anything to say? But I was like, okay. And then Liz said something. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say, yeah, you know, write these things down, because when you're struggling with a meal or you're struggling with times, writing ideas down helps, because I don't know about a lot of you, but my mind says, oh, well, screw it. I can't think of anything that's healthy or decent for me to eat. I'm just going to have what everyone else is having.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, my husband and boys do eat white bread. So that's in the house a lot. So for me to like say, no, I'm not going to have that. So I've been this week, because I didn't get the rice cakes yet. I go grocery shopping tomorrow. It's usually today, but I've been having some oatmeal, or I've been having leftover. I love that one too. Basmati rice with the egg scramble.
Yeah, I have that almost every day. Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. I tried your roasted Vidalia onions. Oh my God. It just makes everything taste so much better.
Doesn't it?
I just pile it on with the eggs and the rice, or even piled it on my veggies. It just gave so much more flavor.
Yeah.
And then my kids come running out. What are you cooking, Mom? It smells like steak. It smell, because you know some people do onions with steak or sausages. I'm like, nope, just onions. And I actually threw some of those baby sweet peppers. I threw those in the oven with it, just because they were in my refrigerator, and it's just so yummy. So everyone thought I was cooking like a fatty summer meal with steak.
I have fat-free onions.